All right, so real quickly, I'm going to just demonstrate how we can combine something like the Drury instructional guide or honestly any other source or document into ChatGPT and have it generate something that we would need that would be aligned with something for Drury. And so I'm going to use the instructional guide as an example, but it could be honestly any kind of document. So I took the instructional guide or an older one and took the charts and tables out of it and kept the format pretty much the same. And so I'm just going to copy this into ChatGPT, and I'm going to use the fourth one, ChatGPT 4, and say I'm looking to create a lesson plan for ELA. Let's just keep it simple. For Catcher in the Rye. After students have previously read the first chapter for homework. I'm going to then copy and paste ChatGPT, the instructional guide, right into it so it can see it all and understand it. And there's a couple things I'll probably predict that'll happen is it might get the wrong information about the first chapter, but it might get some parts of the instructional guide wrong. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And so I'm asking it again to create a lesson plan for the first day after students have read the first chapter. Let's see what happens. Okay. All right. So as you can see, it is using an I can statement, which last time I tried this out, you can see up here, I tried it with figurative lesson. It didn't get the I can statement completely right. And all right, there we go. So far, looking pretty good. Nothing too crazy. This is the agenda. Now it's kind of vague, although it does have some, okay, it has some question stems and things like that. It's pretty good, and it's certainly aligned and makes sense with chapter 1. I think this, as an English teacher, these kind of questions would be a little too early for just questions. These questions wouldn't really fit after just the first chapter of reading, but maybe we could fit them. Maybe it would be, depending on the class, appropriate. Evidence, you can see it's taking the language from the instructional guide and trying to incorporate it as best it can. All right, so it's clearly kind of a thematic focused lesson. Let's refocus this first lesson into one that's primarily about character analysis. All right, so again, sometimes I feel theme too early in the story can lead us down a complicated path depending on the level of our students' understanding of the concept of theme. So, yep, very simple learning target about analyzing the protagonist by examining his thoughts, actions, interactions with other characters. That's definitely a learning target I've used before. It's something very similar. All right. Students work individually to annotate specific passages from chapter 1 that reveal Holden's character traits, thoughts, and actions. All right. As it's coming up with this, I'm simply going to ask it, how can we differentiate this lesson? How could I use manipulatives? Which I didn't spell correctly. And whatever. How could I How could I have more group work involved? Please brainstorm some ideas in bullet form, bullet points. All right, so again, it gives me some additional resources. Now, as always, this is a first draft. This is something that I can use as an idea generator. I'm not going to copy and paste any of this exactly, but it really does kind of give me something that I didn't have before, and which I think it's sometimes useful. Obviously, this gets molded depending on what you're teaching and and what you're thinking about, but you can literally say, like, I'm thinking of doing this. I want to incorporate this, or I want. Uh, you can actually potentially tell it your mastery assessment and have it kind of backwards design some of your lessons, which would be a cool thing that I have not looked into yet. But as you can see, as it's still typing, it's doing all of these things: differentiated reading materials, audio version. And so it has the common ideas we're all familiar with: jigsaw, manipulatives, cutouts, printed image of character. Yeah, okay, that's something that would work. Students match these cutouts to specific passages or quotes. All right, so these are good ideas. Yep, it keeps going. It's still going. Okay, so hopefully we can see how ChatGPT is, again, a resource for planning ideas and creating lesson plans that are also aligned with our school's expectation of what a lesson should look like. And it gives us ideas of differentiation strategies and other ideas. And of course, I could also say at any time, regenerate response to something, and it would come up with a brand new lesson. I could say, I don't want this, I want this instead, and it would come up with a brand new lesson. I want to briefly show that because I ran this activity just before this, just to see what would happen. And it did a few things. I did a lesson about figurative language, and it right here kind of actually had a different format last time. It had a shortened agenda, and then it had a longer lesson plan, which I thought was really cool. And it had different kind of strategies: reciprocal teaching, concept mapping. And so then I tried a bio lesson that worked okay, but it followed the exact same format as my figurative language lesson, which wasn't awesome. Weirdly came up with check-ins and positive affirmations to start your lesson, which again was mentioned in the guide, but it like took that to heart. Then I tried something for Nat Turner for APUS history. Again, posted the instructional guide. And it did come up with a pretty decent one. All right. It truly did. Primary source analysis, discussion and questioning, reciprocal teaching, all things that would fit, which again was good. And then I asked it to come up with some discussion questions that I could use. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. You could pause it if you were interested in seeing what these questions are. And then I asked it, are you familiar with Facing History and Ourselves, which is a resource that I've used before overall. And I said, using your knowledge of the organization and its website, what are some additional activities, tasks, and assignments? I was hoping that it could like synthesize the content on that website with the lesson and give me some ideas. Now, some of the ideas were really good. Identity charts, Facing History and Ourselves loves identity charts. So it fit perfectly. Analyzing primary sources, nothing new, but newspaper articles, letters. I'm sure if I asked ChatGPT to give me some specific primary sources, it might be able to do that. And then it came up with this role-playing activity. Again, often a solid strategy. Divide students into groups and assign roles such as slaveholders. Enslaved. I'm just going to stop there because immediately anybody who has a lick of common sense can see how disastrous that idea would be. And I thought that was a good example of how ChatGPT is only an AI language prediction program. It is not a person with common sense. So Uh, we are the professionals as teachers, and we have to use our best judgment. Although, in fairness to ChatGPT, and when coming up with this god awful idea, engaging in role playing activity, uh, where students are slaveholders, that has been done in classrooms before. Like, it didn't just make this up out of the blue. I think this awful idea has been done, and so it must have been aware of that somewhere along the way and incorporate it into this lesson. Um, I'm going to actually continue for 1 second and say, what is your third idea really good? It sounds insensitive. It sounds insensitive. Let's just say that. You're right. The third idea could potentially be insensitive, especially considering the sensitive nature of the topic and the potential for emotional distress. It's essential to approach such topics with care and respect. Okay. So then that gives you an alternative. All right. Um, which still is about exploring different perspectives, which would be the point instead of getting into a disastrous role playing game. Okay, so again, ChatGPT can be used for planning lessons, aligning them with standards, aligning them with expectations, and it does a pretty good job as a first draft generator.